Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Prime. I'm Shubhendra Ghosh. In the next 1 hour, we get you all the updates from India and the world, stories and updates from India and across the world. We'll track the developments in the poll-bound state, get updates from the ground. Parliament resumes work in the issue of racism in focus. Meanwhile, rise of violence and complex anti-China sentiment in Myanmar. All that and more. First, the big news at this hour. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar speaks in Rajya Sabha, says as land of Mahatma Gandhi, we can never ever turn our eyes away from racism. Also says we've strong ties with the UK, we'll take up such matters with great candor when required. Campaigning underway in full swing in poll-bound states and Union Territory. Amit Shah addresses public rally virtually in Jhargram, West Bengal, also to address a public rally in Guwahati today. BJP President JP Nadda also addresses gatherings in Assam. Scrutiny of nomination to take place for second phase of assembly elections in West Bengal and Assam. India continues its battle against COVID-19. Nearly 3 crore vaccinated till date. Maharashtra, Punjab, Karnataka, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu continue to report spike in daily new cases. Police personnel deployed across Nagpur as the week-long complete lockdown in the city begins. Major breakthrough for security forces in Jammu and Kashmir. Jaish top militant Commander Sajjad Afghani killed in Shopia encounter. Fresh firing resumed between terrorists and security forces at Rawalpura area of South Kashmir, Shopia this morning. In international news, at least 39 reportedly killed in Myanmar as Chinese finance factories set ablaze. Martial law in parts of Myanmar's main city. Anti-Chinese sentiment has risen since the coup, with opponents of the army takeover noting Beijing's muted criticism. Let's now begin with the big stories from the poll-bound states. Campaigning has gained momentum in all poll-bound states of Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, Kerala, Assam and West Bengal. Union Home Minister Amit Shah is in West Bengal today. He held a public rally at Jhargram.
तृणमूल कांग्रेस की सरकार ने बंगाल को पाताल तक नीचे ले जाने का काम किया। हर चीज में भ्रष्टाचार, हर चीज में टोलबाजी, राजनीतिक हिंसा, घुसपैठ, तुष्टीकरण और मारपीट और गुंडागर्दी ने पूरे बंगाल के विकास को तहस नहस कर रख दिया। 10 साल के दीदी के शासन में मोदी जी ने जो योजनाएं पहुंचाई, 115 से ज्यादा योजनाएं गरीबों के लिए, आदिवासियों के लिए, दलितों के लिए मोदी सरकार ने पहुंचाई है। वो योजनाएं आप तक नहीं पहुंच रही और इसका सबसे बड़ा हर्डल है, इसका सबसे बड़ा कोई रोड़ा है तो ये तृणमूल की सरकार है।
Meanwhile, BJP yesterday announced the list of candidates for assembly elections in West Bengal. Party announced the names of 27 candidates for the third phase of election and 38 candidates for the fourth phase. In Assam, BJP has declared names of candidates for 87 constituencies so far. Bharatiya Janata Party is fighting on 92 seats. Campaigning is underway in the state in full swing. Union Home Minister Amit Shah will address a public rally in Guwahati today. Yesterday, he addressed rallies in Tinsukia and Sivsagar. President JP Nadda and Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan also addressed election rallies in Assam. And Congress is also leaving no stone unturned to woo the voters. Polling for the first phase of state assembly elections will be held on March 27th.
अवसरवादिता लोकतंत्र की हत्या, इंस्टीट्यूशंस को का गला घोटना, ये सब कुछ विराजमान है। और इसीलिए संवेदनशील, विवेकशील व्यक्तित्व दिनेश त्रिवेदी ने तृणमूल कांग्रेस को धत्ता दे करके भारतीय जनता पार्टी में इन्होंने ज्वाइन किया है और पश्चिम बंगाल में आप सेवा करेंगे।
And Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Edappadi K. Palanisamy filed nomination from Edappadi constituency. And DMK President M.K. Stalin held a roadshow in Kolattur after filing his nomination. Stalin filed his nomination papers as party candidate from Kolattur Assembly constituency before returning officer M. Tangavel at the Corporation Office in Ayavaram. And AIADMK co-coordinator Chief Minister A.K. Palanisamy released the party's manifesto for the upcoming assembly elections at the party headquarters in Chennai yesterday evening in the presence of the top leadership. Among the key promises that AIADMK has promised include home delivery of ration items, Amma low-cost housing scheme, a monthly rupees 1500 to all women heads of family, dual citizenship for Lankan Tamil refugees, and liquor shops to be closed in a phased manner. And let's talk about Kerala. Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan filed his nomination as CPIM candidate from Dharmadam constituency in Kannur for the upcoming elections. BJP on Sunday announced the second list of candidates for 4 state assembly polls in Kerala. The party will contest in 115 seats out of 140 and declared names of 112 seats. It has left 25 seats for 4 alliance parties. Metroman E. Sridharan will contest from Palakkad Assembly constituency. Rajya Sabha MP K.J. Alphonse will be BJP candidate from Kanirapalli Assembly. And talking about Puducherry, campaigning has gained momentum in Puducherry as well. 4-time MLA P. Kannan joined the BJP. Congress is facing a significant internal rift in the run-up to the elections. Those were the updates coming in from Puducherry. Let's now take a look at broadly how these elections is panned out. If you are confused about so many elections taking place simultaneously, who's fighting whom, how many seats in which state, let's now bring you a ready reckoner to take a look at the manner in which these elections are panned out. We'll take a look at how each of these elections, whether we talk about West Bengal, Assam, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Puducherry, the manner in which they will progress. Let's look at the key data, the key parties who are contesting ahead. Let's first begin with West Bengal. Well, the elections will happen in 8 phases, the highest in all the elections. There's a bitter battle taking place in West Bengal. 294 assembly seats are there to be taken for the contestant parties. The previous winner, incumbent government, is the TMC. In 2016, they'd won 211 seats, formidable victory, but now they're facing a stiff competition from the BJP. The key players, it's TMC versus the BJP versus the Left Alliance, and Congress and Left and ISF have come together to contest for West Bengal. Let's talk about Assam now. The elections are going to take place in 3 phases. 126 seats make the Assam Assembly. Let's look at the key contenders. If you look at the previous results in 2016, BJP scored a clean victory with 60 seats. This time around, BJP alliance with Amagan Parishad and others, along with Congress alliance. Remember, Congress's Bodo alliance has come back to the Congress alliance fold, and also AJP has decided to contest alone. So broadly, these are the 3 forces contesting for Assam. Let's talk about Tamil Nadu, big state. Polls are going to happen in a single phase. The number of assembly seats that form the Tamil Nadu battleground is 234. Let's look at a brief history. Previous winner, AIADMK, who's fighting to continue to stay in power, had 135 seats in 2016. The key players, traditionally AIADMK alliance with the BJP on their side, DMK alliance with the Congress on their side, and the third front this time has become interesting with Kamal Hassan's MNM also trying to make its presence felt. Let's move on to the 4th big state, Kerala. The polls are going to happen in a single phase. number of assembly seats, 140 seats. And again, the traditional battleground between the United Development Front, UDF, and the LDF. LDF, remember, had won the 2016 battle with 91 seats. This time again, LDF, UDF, and BJP significantly has been rising in terms of its vote share, trying to make its presence felt. But the close contest traditionally has taken place between the LDF and the UDF. So along with these states, the union territory that is going to the polls is Puducherry. Let's look at the data from Puducherry. Polls happening in a single phase. So union territory, so 30 seats, relatively a smaller area of competition. Let's quickly look at the manner in which the battleground is laid out. If you look at the previous winner, Congress had won by 15 seats, but we know the government fell. The president's rule is present in Puducherry as we speak. The key players are going to be the Congress Alliance, the AINR Congress Alliance, which has the BJP, the AIADMK also part of it, and PMK this time has decided to go in alone into the election. So broadly, that's already recognized, just to give you clarity on the manner in which the battleground for these 4 states and 1 union territory is laid out. Let's now listen into Shivraj Singh as he addressed an election rally in the poll-bound state.
उन आंदोलनकारियों को गोली से भूनने का पाप किया और मारने का पाप किया तो कांग्रेस ने किया मेरे बहनों और भाइयों, और आप अजमल और कांग्रेस से इकट्ठे हो गए। आप सोच लो, नागनाथ और सापनाथ मिल जाए तो आसाम का क्या करेंगे।
Let's now get some updates from the ground in the poll-bound states. My colleague Yogesh and Abhishek Jha are joining us now. Yogesh from Assam and Abhishek Jha from Tamil Nadu. Yogesh, if I can come to you first, the whole of BJP leadership has reached Assam to really give a lot of boost to campaigning. Give us a picture of how the campaigning blitz is coming along.
So campaigning is in full swing basically in Upper Assam and also the North Assam. We know that there are 47 constituencies which are going to poll on the first phase 27th of March. Now having just a couple of minutes back, BJP President JP Nadda has addressed a rally in Lakhimpur district where I am right now. So he, very significantly, he has underlined the 3 things from the from the center issue. There are both the issues from the national issue as well as the state issues. Both issues are just going around the corner as far as the election campaign, as far as the speeches are concerned, which are delivered by the leaders. Now Ram Mandir issue, also 370, and also Triple Talaq. These 3 issues that were also coined in Bihar election we had seen, and the same issues were repeated here in Assam also. Apart from that, a lot of regional issues. Since yesterday we have seen when Amit Shah was addressing a rally in Tinsukia, he underlined that how Bhupen Hazarika was given respect that he was deserving by the BJP government. On the other hand, also Smriti Irani, couple of days back, he had addressed a rally in Shivsagar. She had underlined that despite the fact that Manmohan Singh was from Assam, but he did not give a proper attention that Assam was deserving. Today also the same in the same line also JP Nadda said that thousands of crore rupees have been given to Assam under the leadership of Narendra Modi. Also AIMS is going to set up in Guwahati. Some other things like in railway, crores of rupees are being invested in railways. Those areas which were connected but not properly developed are being developed now under the BJP government in the state also and at the center also. So the development is in fact the entire, if just comprehensively talking about the entire contents of the speech, then development is one of the core issues as far as BJP is concerned. On the other hand, if talking about Congress, then there are 5 points that Congress is trying to point. Congress is raising these 5 points. CA, obviously CA is the first point that Congress is is just bagging on, and also saying that if the party comes to power, then the Congress will ensure that CA will not be implemented in Assam. Apart from CA, also tea workers salary, electricity consumption bill, 200 units should be given free to the subscribers. And also there are other issues which are local issues. These 5 points that are being covered by the Congress party. As far as alliances are concerned, coming to different parts, we know that Congress has allied with AIUDF. which is in fact a controversial thing here in Assam, and some leaders within the Congress party are also of the opinion that this step can be backfired for the party. Also, Amit Shah had very importantly, underlined that AIUDF alliance with AIUDF basically, showed that how Congress can go to any low at any length to win the election. Right. So, and also Rajnath Singh also, when Rajnath Singh was addressing a rally yesterday in Assam, also said that basically the Congress is just trying to ally with the people who are dividing people in the on the line of religion. So everything are just involved in the election, and the campaigning are in the full swing right now in Assam in all the constituencies.
All right, there Yogesh, stay with us while we connect with Abhishek, who's reporting from Tamil Nadu, from Chennai. Abhishek, now that AIADMK has also come out with its manifesto, DMK did earlier, how does the battleground in terms of issues and the vision becomes clear now? Abhishek, we'll just have to check the audio line once again. We can't hear you very clearly. If you could just check the line once again, and if you could just repeat your response. I can't hear you very clearly, Abhishek. Abhishek, we'll just come to you. BJP Chief JP Nadda is addressing a rally in Lakhimpur. Let's hear him.
पास एक ही गारंटी और क्या है वो गारंटी कि जहां आएंगे वहां घोटाला करेंगे। एक ही गारंटी, मिशन है उनका, मिशन फॉर कमीशन। उनको कमीशन चाहिए, कमीशन, और हमको मिशन चाहिए। उन्होंने 7 साल लोगों को बरगलाया है, लोगों को दिक्कत में डाला है, लोगों की सेवा नहीं की है, और इसीलिए 7 साल बाद हमें गड्ढे भरने पड़ते हैं, सड़क बनानी पड़ती है, चौड़ी सड़क बनानी पड़ती है, सिंगल लेन को 4 लेन बनाना पड़ता है और डबल लेन को 6 लेन बनाना पड़ता है।
We were getting from the ground. My colleagues Yogesh and Abhishek continue to be with us. Yogesh, let me come to you again. Yogesh is in Assam at the moment. In terms of expectations of the people on the ground, what have you been tracking? We've understood the vision that the parties have for the people. What about people, their expectations from these elections? My colleague Yogesh Sheetal.
As far as vision is concerned, there is already,
Yes, Yogesh, go on, please.
Yeah, what I was saying is basically as far as vision is concerned, the Congress vision, Congress has tried to come clean in this election, and precisely we had a word with the opposition leader, former opposition leader in the Assam Assembly, and he was saying that Congress this time is not going to make a lot of promises, just only 5 promises that the party is just relying on, and only these 5 promises the party is going to the people and just trying to convince them that these 5 sort of things would be fulfilled. Also on part of Congress, also they are saying that there were certain promises that were assured by the BJP when in 2016, but that was not fulfilled. Basically, this is sort of politics. We know that these things are happening in election. Also, on the other end, as far as BJP's vision is concerned, today Amit Shah, the Home Minister, he's scheduled to launch a campaign that is selfie with development. The basic, the basic attempt is to reach out to the people and convince that, see, we have done certain development and we have selfie with these developments, and also, trying to promote party as a, front bearer of development. So these are the 2 basic visions of 2 main alliances.
Right, then Yogesh, let me again, once again, connect to Abhishek and get some updates from Tamil Nadu. Thanks very much, Yogesh, for getting us those updates from Assam. Let's turn to Abhishek, who's joining us from Tamil Nadu. Abhishek, if you can hear me clearly now, just take us through the manner in which the battleground is laid out now that the manifesto of the key players are out. Abhishek, yeah.
So Shubhendu, the battle is actually being hardened here because today we have seen nomination filing of senior party leaders from AIADMK side. Palaniswamy, the CM, has filed his nomination from Edipatti in Salem district. In Chennai, we have seen that Stalin, MK Stalin, has filed his nomination paper. So with these nomination papers, formally they have come to the battleground where Stalin has projected himself as the coming would-be chief minister of candidate for the DMK party. This time around, what goes in favor of the DMK party is that the 10 years of ruling of AIADMK and the double anti-incumbency factor is something that AIADMK has to actually deal with and convince voters in the state that the party deserves to be voted for third time around also because of the kind of work or the development work or whatever poll promises it had earlier done, and it has delivered on that. So it needs to reach out to every voter and tell them actually what all it has delivered, and in case it happens to convince them, then only people will vote it back to the part. For Stalin, he's 68 years old now, the stalwart. He's very popular among youth, and he's been waiting to be the chief minister of this state. He's waiting to lead the party from the front. For 10 years he has to sit in the opposition, and continuously he has been charging the AIADMK government for corruption and mishandling the state and inappropriately handling the finances of the state and not letting this development works happen. So how much of his allegation and charges against this incumbent government will actually succeed in getting him more votes, that we'll have to see. Meanwhile, talking about the voter turnouts, the huge voter turnouts, at this crowd are turning at the rallies of Stalin, but we'll have to see how much of that crowd actually swings in voting centers also while deciding to vote either of AIADMK or DMK.
Right, and Abhishek, talking about crowds, just curious to bring in another angle. We know Tamil Nadu is one of the states where the COVID numbers have been spiking. In view of that, how is the assembly election going to be different from the other states?
So it's like a little disappointing, Shubhendu, to talk about this COVID sensitivity here, because every time we go at any administrative place or any government place, mostly the government servants, they are abiding by the COVID protocol. Mostly we'll see government servants, police, public, or any administrative staff putting on masks and trying to maintain the social distance. But out in the open, when we go out and cover rallies or meeting people, or the life seems very much normal. People are not taking that COVID seriously. The social distancing totally goes out of the window. But the good thing is only that the senior party leaders from all across all party lines, they are continuously trying to tell people that the fear of corona, the pandemic, has still not gone, and they should not lower their guards. They should continue to keep those social distancing and put masks on and sanitization. Those were the normal health safety protocols. So at least from the higher side, or from senior party leader side, across the party spectrum, we are seeing that everybody is trying to tell people that still to abide by the health safety protocols. However, the ground reality is not as promising and as encouraging if we talk about the following of COVID health safety protocol.
All right, there. Abhishek, thanks very much for getting us those updates from Tamil Nadu. Also, thank you to Yogesh for joining us from Assam. And let's now move on to our developing story. Let's talk about Parliament. Both houses of Parliament resumed proceedings today after a break of 4 days. And BJP MP Ashwani Vaishnav raised the issue of racism in the UK in Rajya Sabha. He spoke of cyberbullying faced by an Indian student, Rashmi Samant, at Oxford University, as well as the interview by Meghan Markle. He urged the government to take up the issue of treatment of migrants in the UK with the British government. And speaking on the issue, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said, India, being the land of Mahatma Gandhi, can never turn a blind eye to any form of racism, particularly in a country where large Indian diaspora lives.
As the land of Mahatma Gandhi, we can never ever turn our eyes away from racism wherever it is, particularly so when it is in a country where we have such a large diaspora. As a friend of the UK, I mean, we also have concerns about its reputational impact. What I do want to say, sir, is that we have strong ties with the UK. We will take up such matters with great candor when required. We will monitor these developments very, very closely. We will raise it when required, and we will always champion the fight against racism and other forms of intolerance.
An External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, today made a statement on COVID-19 situation and the impact on Indians abroad. The Foreign Minister said India has concluded air bubbles with 27 nations so far, as people and students are returning back.
A total of 45,82,043 people from 98 countries have returned to India under the aegis of the Vande Bharat mission. The vast majority came through flights, though there were also some who came by ship and across land crossings. Kerala received the maximum returnees, followed by Delhi, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. UAE was the country from where the maximum number of stranded Indians returned, followed by Saudi Arabia, United States and Qatar. 39% of the returnees were workers, 39% were professionals, 6% students, 8% visitors and 4.7% stranded tourists.
And highlighting the success of diplomacy of the current government, Dr. Jaishankar said that repatriation would not have been possible without the cooperation of partner governments and various agencies. He said government has spent some 33 crore rupees the Indian Community Welfare Fund.
The largest repatriation exercise in history of the world could not have happened without the goodwill and cooperation of partner governments. And if that was so forthcoming, it is because of the enormous efforts of this government's diplomacy, starting from the Prime Minister personally. Whether it was in reaching out, invoking relationships, using our networking, or engaging in direct contacts, we really went all out to ensure the welfare of our brothers and sisters abroad.
And the minister said to help our citizens sympathetically, the government is also urging partner governments to look at their employment needs.
Just as the government has led the way for an economic recovery at home, we are also similarly untiring in our efforts to help renew livelihoods of our people abroad. In recent months, the Prime Minister has engaged the leaders of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar and Oman. Under his directions, I have travelled even during the COVID period to UAE, Qatar, Bahrain and Oman to discuss with the governments there the welfare of our people. Because of restrictions at their end, such travel was not possible to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, but I've been in regular touch with their foreign ministers.
And talking about Rajya Sabha, responding to a question on afforestation and climate change, in Rajya Sabha, Minister for Environment and Climate Change, Prakash Javadekar said, over 6 years, some 15,000 square kilometers of tree cover has increased. Rupees 48,000 crores have been given to states for various afforestation programs.
In last 6 years, there is net increase of 15,000 square kilometers of tree cover. More importantly, the pace will increase because last year we have distributed nearly 48,000 crore rupees to the states, and we have put a direction also that given direction that 80% of this money should go in for afforestation. So afforestation gets a big boost. There is also state level programs of tree plantations all over. At the same time, there is Green India Mission and there is big program of horticulture mission by the Agriculture Ministry. So all these put together, I am very sure that we will achieve it.
And the minister also said Prime Minister Narendra Modi has set a goal of restoring 26 million hectares of land in the next 10 years.
Our Prime Minister has also declared that we will restore 25 million hectares of 26 million hectares of land in 10 years, and from degraded land to good land, and that also creates carbon sink for us.
And my colleague Vishal joins us with more updates from the Parliament. Vishal, amidst the controversial Meghan Markle interview, there's been a global deliberation around the issue of racism. Help us understand, how was it articulated in the Parliament today?
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Shubhendu. Yes, it was very well articulated because, as you heard, the Minister of External Affairs making it very clear that India has always fought any form of intolerance, and it would also raise the issue of racism as and when it is required, with the UK authorities making it very clear that India does not abide by racism or intolerance. So all that was published by the American newspaper does not substantiate the spirit, the Indian spirit, and also the working of Modi government. And this was very much clear in the statement of S. Jaishankar, in which it was, in a reply, he was saying that we will raise up the issue with the UK authorities. And yes, it is very unfortunate how an Indian student in Oxford, which is the most prestigious institution, rather university in the world, making an Indian student, targeting an Indian student, cyberbullying an Indian student, and also highlighting, detailing the Hindu roots of her parents. So this is very much clear in the statement of the Foreign Affairs Minister that India neither supports nor abides by any form of intolerance or racism.
Well, also, Parliament comes back after a rather long break. Help us understand the key legislative agenda ahead.
Yes, Shubhendu, interestingly, Parliament has been functioning on very well. I'm talking about both houses of the Parliament. The upper house took a lunch break at 1 o'clock, but the lower house continues to function, and there is no break as far as the lunch is concerned. And all the time that was wasted last week, it seems that the lower house and the upper house have decided, along with the opposition, that they would continue with the business. And one important statement that was made in the lower house, rather a reply tabled by the finance minister, that all the 5 segments of oil and gas, including crude oil, petrol, diesel, the gas of aviation turbine, and also the natural gas will not be put under the purview of the GSA. Government is not considering this issue. And replying to a supplementary question, the MOS Finance Anurag Thakur said that he would request the state governments to bring down the tax so that the central government can also bring down the taxes, especially on the oil and gas, to give relief to the general public. So this was an important statement. And also you heard the Information and Broadcasting and also the Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar highlighting how the Modi government is working very fast and focused as far as increasing the green cover in the country is concerned. You heard the minister saying that 26 million hectares of degraded land would be restored in another 10 years. This is all being done under the able leadership of the Indian Prime Minister. And also the External Affairs Minister making it very clear that the 6 years of strong and enhanced diplomacy of India has made it possible that the largest such exercise took place, in which around 46 lakh people were brought back to India from 98 countries. Now that was a huge and gigantic exercise. Obviously, of course, Air India played a major role bringing back more than 10 lakh passengers on its own. Shubhendu?
Right there, Vishal. Thanks very much for joining us with those updates from the Parliament. Let's now move on to our National Prime segment. And taking a look at the COVID-19 update from across the country, as per the Union Health Ministry, India's total active COVID caseload has reached 2,19,262, comprising 1.93% of the total positive cases. 5 states of Maharashtra, Punjab, Karnataka, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu continue to report a surge in COVID daily new cases. They cumulatively account for some 78% of the new cases reported in the past 24 hours. 26,291 new cases were registered in the past 24 hours. Maharashtra has reported the highest daily new cases at 16,620, accounting for nearly 63% of the daily new cases from across the country. It is followed by Kerala with 1,792, while Punjab reported 1,492 new cases. 3 states, Maharashtra, Kerala, Punjab, cumulatively account for some 77% of India's total active COVID cases. Maharashtra alone accounts for more than 58% of the total active cases in India. Meanwhile, India is fast approaching total vaccination coverage of 3 crore. The vaccine doses have been administered through some 5,13,065 sessions. As on day 58 of the vaccination, 1,40,880 vaccine doses were given out. Being a Sunday, most states and union territories did not schedule vaccination sessions yesterday. India's cumulative recoveries stand at 1,10,07,352. The national recovery rate is 96.68%. 17,455 recoveries were registered in a single day. 84.1% of the new recovered cases are observed to be concentrated across 6 states. Maharashtra has reported the maximum number of single-day recoveries with 8,861 newly recovered cases. 118 casualties, deaths were reported in the past 24 hours. In Jammu and Kashmir, fresh firing resumed between terrorists and security forces in Rawalpora area of South Kashmir, Shopian. This morning, Jaish top militant commander Sajjad Afghani has been killed in Shopian encounter. On Sunday, one local LEG terrorist, namely Jahangir Ahmed, was killed in fierce gunfight at the same spot. As the joint team of forces approached towards the suspected spot, the hiding terrorists fired upon the forces, triggering a gunfight. Union Minister and senior BJP leader Nitin Gadkari said that BJP-led government in West Bengal would provide wheels to development in the state. He added that if elected to form government in the state, the party will initiate various developmental projects, including 1 lakh crore infrastructure projects that will also generate huge employment for the youth.
केंद्र सरकार भाजपा का है और राज्य सरकार भी भाजपा का आएगा, तो ये डबल इंजन लगने के बाद बंगाल की बहुत प्रगति होगी। मैं विश्वास के साथ कहता हूं कि केवल 1 लाख करोड़ के रोड हम लोग बंगाल में बनाएंगे और अभी केवल लैंड एक्विजिशन और फॉरेस्ट एनवायरनमेंट क्लियरेंस अगर हमको मिलता है तो आज भी हम बना सकते थे, हम बनाने के लिए तैयार हैं, पर दुर्भाग्यवश इसमें अड़चनें आती है। अगर एक ही पार्टी की दोनों सरकार होगी और डबल इंजन लगेगा तो हम बंगाल की तस्वीर बदल देंगे, बंगाल का विकास करेंगे, बेरोजगारों को रोजगार देंगे और गांव गरीब मजदूर और किसान का कल्याण करके बंगाल का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हम इतना अच्छा बना देंगे कि बंगाल लगातार प्रगति और विकास की ओर अग्रसर रहेगा।
Let's look at some other stories now. The 4th edition of Pariksha Pe Charcha is going to take place this month. However, no official date for the event has been announced as yet. Students who participated in last year's Pariksha Pe Charcha shared their experiences while talking to DD India. Here's what they said.
पिछले साल 2020 में मैं परीक्षा पे चर्चा में चयन हुआ था। मैं केंद्रीय विद्यालय का छात्र हूँ, तो वहाँ पर एक एग्ज़ाम हुआ था PPC परीक्षा पे चर्चा, तो उसमें से मेरा चयन हुआ था। मैं बहुत खुशनसीब हूँ कि मेरे जो टीचर्स हैं, जो मेरे अध्यापक हैं, उन लोगों ने मेरा सपोर्ट करा। तो जब मेरा चयन हुआ तो मैं डायरेक्ट दिल्ली गया। वहाँ पर मैं तालकटोरा स्टेडियम में श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी से मिला। आप सब जैसे का आप सबको पता ही है, वन ऑफ द वर्ल्ड बिगेस्ट प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं वो। और उन्होंने हमें बहुत ही मोटिवेट किया। उन्होंने ये भी बताया कि जो हमारे टीनेजर्स हैं और ये हैं बच्चे हैं और जो मतलब आने वाली पीढ़ी है उसे जो है परीक्षा को एक मतलब फॉर एग्जांपल क्रिकेट फुटबॉल इस हिसाब से प्लेइंग के तौर पे देखना चाहिए।
परीक्षा पे चर्चा में शामिल हुई थी जिसका कार्यक्रम दिल्ली में हुआ और उसका अनुभव मेरे लिए बहुत अच्छा और नया था। छात्र जीवन में ऐसा अनुभव मिलना बहुत अच्छी बात है और मेरे दोस्तों के लिए यही संदेश है कि इस तरह की जितनी भी प्रतियोगिताएं हों उसमें हिस्सा लेना चाहिए जिससे अपना एक्सपीरियंस बढ़ता है। और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी सभी बच्चों के सवालों के बहुत अच्छे से उत्तर दिए थे जिससे हमें बहुत प्रेरणा मिली।
मैं प्रधानमंत्री जी के प्रोग्राम परीक्षा पे चर्चा 2020 के लिए चयन हुआ था। उस प्रोग्राम में मुझे बहुत सारे एक्सपीरियंस मिला और उस प्रोग्राम में प्रधानमंत्री जी ने हम सभी को परीक्षा के जो दिक्कतें होती हैं उसका सामना करने के लिए और उसका हल करने के लिए बहुत सारे चीजें बताई हैं। और इसी के साथ साथ उन्होंने ये भी बताया कि परीक्षा में अंक ही हर चीज नहीं होता है, उसके अलावा जिंदगी में सफल भी होना बहुत मायने रखता है।
The youngsters talking about their experience of Pariksha Pe Charcha. Time now to get all the updates from the world of business. And my colleague Ajay Mishra joins us for more.
Thank you, Shubhendu. Let's start with the markets first. The Indian benchmark indices edged to the rise, and the losses. Let's go back to the top story of the stock market. Right now, we can see that there is a downward trend in the Sensex and BSE. The Indian benchmark indices added to their losses and were trading nearly 2% lower in the Monday's noon deal on the back of weak macroeconomic data and resurgence in the COVID-19 infections. Besides elevated crude price and jump in the bond yields, they also weighted on the sentiments. The S&P BSE Sensex fell 900 points or 1.8% to 49,860 levels, and the Nifty 50 indices index gave up 14,800 mark. Bajaj Finance, Bajaj Finserv, HDFC, State Bank of India and HDFC Bank fell over 1% each and were the top Sensex laggards. Meanwhile, the shares of MTAR Technologies registered a bumper listing today. The stock listed at 1063 on the BSE, which is a premium of 85% over the issue price. The Nifty sectoral indices were painted red, with Nifty Bank Index down 2.7%, bleeding the most. In the broader market, the S&P BSE mid cap and small cap indices were down 1.7 and 1% respectively. And the government on Monday said that there is no proposal right now to bring crude petroleum, petrol, diesel and aviation turbine fuel, natural gas under the goods and services tax. In a written reply in the Lok Sabha, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that the GST Council has not met any recommendation for inclusion of these goods under GST. The Council may consider the issue of inclusion of these petroleum products at an appropriate time, keeping in view the relevant factor including revenue implications, she said. Replying to the supplementary, Anurag Thakur said that the centre and state should work together to check the prices of diesel and petrol. He urged the state governments to reduce the tax on the petroleum products, adding that the centre will also take decision following the state government's reduction of prices. Meanwhile, the wholesale price index based WPI inflation in February rose to 27-month high to 4.17% as against 2.03% a month ago in January, according to a government data released on Monday. The December WPI has been revised to 1.95% versus 1.22% earlier. The WPI food index in February 2021 stood at 3.31% against 0.26% in the previous month. In non-food article, the inflation was at minus 0.51% in February, which is a decline compared to the last month. Well, that's all in the finance for today. Let's go back to Shubhendu for more news and updates. Thanks.
Those were the updates from the world of business and finance, and time now to find out what's making news across the world. Let's talk about Myanmar. Protests continue unabated in Myanmar. Security forces fired on pro-democracy demonstrators on Monday, according to witnesses. That's a day after dozens of protesters were killed and attackers torched several Chinese finance factories in the city of Yangon. The protesters took to the streets in defiance of the authorities, escalating the use of violence, with dozens killed on Sunday in the bloodiest day since February 1st coup. The arson attacks on Sunday provoked China's strongest comments yet on the turmoil gripping its Southeast Asian neighbor, where many people see China as supportive of the February 1st coup. In the most violent day of the protests since it began more than 6 weeks back in Myanmar, some 39 people were killed on Sunday. And Rajesh Shah is joining us with the ground situation. Rajesh, if you could take us through the developments in Myanmar. The violence is getting bloodier and this complex anti-China sentiment that is also surfacing in the country.
Yes, Shwendu, there has been an anti-China sentiment right from the beginning of the protests, because lots of people look at China to be supportive of the military government in Myanmar. And there have been daily sit-ins and protests in front of the Chinese embassy in Myanmar. Now today, in the morning, there were reports that 2 factories have been set on fire, but Global Times today says it's a government outlet, sort of the Chinese government, that 32 Chinese plants are burnt in Myanmar. As you said, in a very strongly worded statement, it says it calls upon the Myanmar government to take action and to punish the people who have done. It also insinuates that people who are kind of Hong Kong, people from Hong Kong and NGOs funded by the West are behind these anti-China sentiments, and it has asked the government to support it. Now, the thing is that despite such a huge massacre yesterday, where 39 people were killed, the protests have continued even today. In Mandalay, there are reports that in Yangon, the reports suggest say that the protests continue. In the central town of Miik, the protests are continuing, and reports keep coming in from several places.
Rajesh, has there been any impact of the growing international pressure and concern over the situation in Myanmar? We've seen the UK, the US all coming together and condemning the violence in clear terms. Also, the Security Council has spoken against this. Has there been an impact on the ground on the military government in Myanmar so far?
Well, Shwendu, there has not been any impact on the military government here in Myanmar in terms of the real change in their attitude. In fact, it has become more and more violent over this period of time. But there are certain reports floating on the social media which suggest that the government is running into some sort of financial crisis, and banks are being asked to submit their balance sheets and such things, which suggest a kind of crisis in terms of the finances for the government. And you know, the government has put many of the townships, in fact 20 townships, under martial law, which basically means that the civilian government is no longer functional there. The commander of that area would be the real administrator, which means further tightening of the grip of the military over the administration. As of now, civilian administration is reporting to the military in most of the places, but in some areas where in Mandalay, 12 more townships have been put under martial law, which means that the commander of that area will actually be the ruling, he would be the head of the administration there. So in actual terms, there doesn't seem to be any impact on the Myanmar government so far as the UN and other international pressure is concerned, Shwendu.
All right there, Rajesh. Thanks very much for joining us with those updates. And after the historic Quad Summit, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin will make their first overseas trip as they visit the key allies, Japan and South Korea. The visit gains significance as it comes after the first ever Quad Summit on 13th of March. The joint statement issued underlined the continued high-level engagements between the member countries. Secretary Austin will also travel to India, where he will meet Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and other senior national security leaders to discuss the deepening US-India major defense partnership and advancing cooperation for a free, prosperous and open Indo-Pacific and Western Indian Ocean region. Meanwhile, India's ambassador to US, Saranjit Sandhu, spoke of the significance of this visit.
This visit is a reflection of the importance which United States accords to India and the importance of our bilateral relationship. Secretary Austin is going to be the first senior cabinet minister visiting India, and India is looking forward to his visit. In the joint statement, there is a very clear indication that the foreign ministers will meet, and also by the end of the year, all the four leaders have pledged to have the in-person summit.
And time now to get all the action from the world of sports. And my colleague Abhishek joins us for more.
Thank you so much, Shubhendu. Very good afternoon to you. We'll start with winter sports. And speaking in Rajya Sabha, Union Minister of State for Youth Affairs and Sports, Kiran Rijiju, said that government has taken several steps to boost winter sports in Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. Let's listen in what he said.
लद्दाख और जम्मू कश्मीर और जितना हिल स्टेट्स है जो विंटर स्पोर्ट्स का संभावना है उसके लिए पहली बार हिस्टोरिक स्टेप्स उठाया गया है और विंटर गेम्स दूसरे चरण शुरू हो चुके हैं लद्दाख में भी जम्मू कश्मीर में भी। तो इसलिए लद्दाख में माननीय सदस्यों को भी सिर्फ आप ही नहीं पूरे हाउस के सदन के मेंबर्स को भी मैं रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहूँगा कि आप जब भी जम्मू कश्मीर लद्दाख जाएंगे तो आप स्पोर्ट्स एक्टिविटीज जो सरकार ने कदम उठाए हैं उसमें आप जरूर जाके देखिए, आपको भी अच्छा लगेगा कि इतने सारे कदम हमने पहल किए हैं और लोग पसंद भी कर रहे हैं।
Right, he also added that Jammu and Kashmir has performed well in football and has a great potential. Minister further said that the government will promote football as priority.
Kashmir has amazing potential in football, particularly as honorable member was asking. They have performed exceedingly well. The Kashmir team is exceedingly progressing well in all level of football. In the national league also, they have performed very well. So keeping that in mind and looking at the interest of the Kashmiri youth in football, we have decided to promote football as priority along with all other sports. And I'll be going to Kashmir again in just after this session of Parliament, and we are going to launch some more programs in Kashmir because winter is over and summer is coming. So we will start summer sports, water sports, and particularly football will be one of our main agenda.
Right, talking about football now, Great Pele on Sunday congratulated Cristiano Ronaldo for breaking his record of goals scored in official matches. Portuguese star Ronaldo hit a hat-trick for Juventus in a 3-1 Serie A win over Cagliari to bring his total to 770 goals. The 36-year-old took to Instagram to tell his 270 million followers he could now claim the record, having matched Pele's 767 on March 2nd. Cricket now, Mithali Raj, captain of Indian women's ODI team, achieved another milestone in the 4th ODI against South Africa. She has become the first woman cricketer in the world to complete 7,000 runs in ODIs. Mithali made his record as soon as she completed 26 runs against South Africa on Sunday. She has scored 7,019 runs in 213 ODIs at an average of 50.49 so far. While at number 2 is former England captain Charlotte Edwards. She scored 5,992 runs in 191 ODIs at an average of 38.16. And Mumbai won the Vijay Hazare Trophy for the 4th time. They defeated Uttar Pradesh by 6 wickets in the final on Sunday. And with this victory, Mumbai jointly became the second most successful team in tournament history after Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has won this tournament 5 times, while Mumbai and Karnataka have won the Vijay Hazare Trophy 4 times each. Mumbai captain, meanwhile, Prithvi Shaw, became the first player to score 800 or more runs in a season of the tournament. He scored 827 runs with the help of 4 centuries in 8 matches. Moving on, Tamil Nadu's CA Bhavani Devi has become the first ever Indian fencer to qualify for the Tokyo Olympic Games. The fencer secured a spot in the World Cup in Hungary after the hosts lost in the quarterfinals of the team event, allowing South Korea to progress to the semi-finals. Bhavani Devi qualified through the adjusted official ranking method. Two individual spots were up for grabs for the Asia and Oceania region based on the world rankings as of April 5th, 2021. She is ranked 45th and occupies one of the two available slots based on the rankings. Well, that's all we have in the world of sports. Back to you, Shubhendu.
Thanks very much, Abhishek. Appreciate you joining us with all those updates. And time now to find out what's in store in Life Prime today. Let's talk about Grammys, known to be the world's greatest music honors. The winners of the 63rd edition of the Grammy Awards were announced on Sunday, with pop sensation Beyonce emerging as the female artist with maximum number of trophies. Beyonce bagged some 4 Grammys on Sunday, including one for Black Parade, celebrating black culture. The song was named Best R&B Performance of the Year. She also shared 2 of the awards with Megan Thee Stallion, taking her total career wins to 28. With this, she surpassed the previous Grammy record for female artists set by bluegrass singer Alison Krauss. However, the top honors were bagged by Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish. 19 years old, Billie continued her winning streak by bagging award for Everything I Wanted, that won the record of the year. She also won for her theme song for the upcoming James Bond movie, No Time to Die. Taylor Swift, on the other hand, won the album of the year for her record Folklore, recorded during the coronavirus lockdowns.
I love her work ethic. I love the way
Meanwhile, in
she
a
is.
socially distanced ceremony of the live and pre-recorded performances, the writers of I Can't Breathe by R&B artist H.A.R. won the Song of the Year. The song was written in response to Black Lives Matter protests that roiled the United States last summer following the police killing of George Floyd. Apart from that, British singer Dua Lipa won the Best Pop Vocal Album for her Dance by Future Nostalgia, while Megan Thee Stallion was named the Best New Artist of the Year at the Grammys Award. Some of the awards were announced at smaller venues in cities like Nashville, New York, and Los Angeles.
I want to thank all of my collaborators who are on the stage. I want to thank Serban Gania. I want to thank.
This is insane. One thing that I've really come to realize is how much happiness is so important. I felt really jaded at the end of my last album where I
rodeo for the first time and I saw Destiny Child perform and I was like, you know what? Yes, I'm about to go hard. I love her work ethic. I love the way she is. I love the way she carries herself, and my mama will always be like, Megan.
That fight that we had in us the summer of 2020.
And that brings us to the close of this edition of Midday Prime. Namaskar.